You didn't think I would actually rickroll you, did ya? After all, I couldn't possibly do that. Not after what I subjected your guys' eyes to. That god-awful thumbnail. You know, I came up to my friend and I asked for the most YouTube meta thumbnail, and I'll have to say what he came up with, it was perfection. So anyway, I promised I will show you guys how to use my script. Sorry it's a bit late. I ended up spending quite a bit more time just improving the script and also procrastinating. But anyways, better late than never. So here is a tutorial. However, I will preface the video by saying this. A lot of people are afraid of the risk of a ban, and I would say ultimately it is up to you to evaluate that risk. And if you do decide to use a program, hey, worst case scenario, we could all use less time playing gacha games and be more productive at life, right? Right? Jokes aside, if you do decide to become an epic musician like me, follow the download link I have put in the description, and that will lead you to the GitHub release page. And make sure you grab the correct file. It should have the file name Lyre MIDI player, and it's a zip file. Alright, so once you have downloaded the zip file, you open it up and it should look something like this. Simply extract the folder out and everything you need will be in there. And I already hear some of you shouting, oh, but Dooley, the exe is bad. What if it's a virus? What if the game hates it? In that case, go watch TAKA Gugus video, alright? Okay. Go watch Taka GG's video. He goes into how to use the Python script directly. Actually, don't go just yet. Finish watching this tutorial because I will go into the configurations in much greater detail. Alright, so for those of you who are less paranoid, who likes the convenience of a single click and not having to worry about installing Python and all these dependencies, I have packed all of that into one executable for you. Quick interruption, Editor Dooley here. Turns out sometimes if you just click on the exe and it doesn't run, there's a chance your antivirus might be blocking it. So here are some on-screen instructions on how to allow the executable on the default Windows antivirus. Again, if you feel like you can't trust this, it might be a virus or something, by all means, go to Taka GG's video after you watch this one, and he will show you how to run the script directly. It's all open source. And I just want there to be an easier option on how you can run the script. Ultimately, it's down to choice and preference. It's nice to have choices anyway. Now back to the video tutorial. Before you run that, let's check out the actual configuration file, which you can see it's named midi_config.json. Open that up and you can see here is what I prepared for you, a template or a skeleton of the configuration that you could use. As you can see, there are a total of 10 song configs, and you can activate each one by pressing the corresponding number key. To start, I will show you an example of putting a song into key number 1. So here we have Bad Apple. It's a MIDI file I used in my last showcase video. By the way, I will be uploading all my personal song configs and where to download the files into a separate GitHub repository, and I will link that repository in the video description as well. Feel free to check it out and use any of my configs in there, and I don't know, maybe you could also make a pull request and share your configs there as well so everyone can use it. Anyways, back to the tutorial. So here you can see I renamed the file to something a bit more human friendly, and just in case if you don't have file extension enabled, here I showed the option to show and hide file extension. If you don't see the .mid part of the file name, that means you have file extension hidden. Make sure you enable that and make sure you do have a MIDI file which ends in .mid. Now what you want to do is go into the config file and put the path to your MIDI file here with your actual file name. The file name would be all you need if you put your file in the same folder. Now go ahead and click on MIDI.exe. It will ask you for admin privileges, but that is just because the game itself runs as admin, so we need to run as admin as well. Once the program is opened up, you should see this window. If everything went through correctly, you should also see badapple.mid have now loaded into the #1 key slot. So now, how about we see how we can actually play this in the game? To demonstrate the key presses, I will open up this keyboard overlay. The key combination for start playing is tab key plus the number key that you assign the song into. So for this case, the key you want to press is tab 1. And of course, you can stop playing at any point as well. The key I assigned to that is a space key, so just tap space to stop playing. Well, that was pretty much it. Pretty easy, isn't it? Although I did mention there are quite a few more configurations that you can play around with. So for those of you who are interested in some more advanced configurations, I will briefly go over each and every one of them. And I say briefly because if we go full on diving into the details, we're gonna be here for another hour or two. So here on the screen is our friendly neighborhood config file. Up at the very top, you can see the config named always reload config. So this one will dictate how your config file will be reloaded by the program. Normally, by default, this will be set to false, and that means there's a specific key combination you have to press for the program to reload the config file. This key combination is tab and tilde, and if you don't know what tilde key is, here's what it is. However, if you're quickly editing and testing some configs, you might want to set this setting to true. That way, whenever you play the song, it will actually automatically reload the config file. So this will be useful if you're actively editing the config file, and it saves you some key presses. But you probably don't need it when you're just playing, otherwise it's gonna literally reload every single time unnecessarily. Next, you can see down underneath we have a group of config inside the songs list. You can tell where each group starts and ends by looking for the enclosing brackets. And basically each group denotes the configs you have for each song. The first config of the group is key. This is the tab plus which key you press to play that song. Note that I included key 1 to 0, basically the number keys, but you can actually use more than just the number keys, just add more configs if you need to. The next config on the list is file, and this is obviously which MIDI file you want to play. Note that at the beginning of the video, I only put in the file name. That is because the MIDI file is actually within the same folder. However, if you do want to use a different folder, you might want to use a full path. And in JSON, keep in mind, you need to do double slashes rather than just single slash, because backslash is actually a special character used in string escape. The next two configs are channel filter and track filter. When these are left empty, all of the channels or tracks will be played, but if you only want to play some of them, you could apply this filter, and only the channel number or the track numbers you put in these filters will be played. You can figure out channel number or track number by loading the MIDI file into softwares like MIDI editor, which I will also link in the description. One thing to keep in mind when using the track filter function is sometimes there are tracks like a track 0 that could look like it doesn't have any notes in it, but they're actually meta tracks. And in order for the media files to be read properly, these tracks do need to be left in as well. So make sure to include those. On to the next config. No hold implies when your media file is played, the program will either play it as a tap or a hold. No hold true means every note will be played as a simple quick tap, whereas no hold false will actually hold down the note for its full duration. There are no difference to the game as far as I can tell between tapping a key versus holding down a key in terms of how each individual note will sound. However, due to how the game processes inputs, if there are back-to-back or overlapping notes, if no hold is set to false, the game will actually start to skip playing these notes altogether. So for most songs, no hold true is probably what you want. But for some specific MIDI arrangements like the Bad Apple one, there are a ton of double notes, and personally I think skipping some of these notes by setting no hold to false will actually sound a lot cleaner. Here is a comparison. Alright, which one do you prefer? Let me know in the comment section down below, no hold or with hold. Either way, you will have the option to choose either in the config. So the next config, this one called Keypress Duration, is basically just when you have no hold set to false. This will be how long the key taps actually are. As you can see, this value can be pretty small. The default I set is actually 0.01 seconds. I don't think you would actually ever need to change this value, but just in case you have some crazy super fast paced song or like you have consistent issues, you can either decrease or increase this value. The next config, skip start, very straightforward. It means skipping the start of a song. The number that comes after is how many seconds you want to skip. This one is super useful because many times you're gonna have a media file which is like blank in the beginning for some reason, or you just want to get into the good parts of the song, like skip the intro. So just find how many seconds you want to skip and put it in here. On to the next. This one is called root note. The root note is basically what you want the lowest note on the lyre to be. Choosing the proper root note is super important. It decides whether a song could be played on the lyre at all or not. By using a different root note, you're effectively transposing that music, and for the best result, obviously we want to transpose it to the C major scale, which is what the game uses. However, if you want to set your own root note, in MIDI files, they actually use numbers to represent notes instead of the letters we use normally. Here is a reference table for all the notes' numerical values in MIDI. So, does all that musical theory stuff sound like nothing to you? Or you just can't be bothered? Don't worry, I got you. You can actually ignore this config altogether by using the string auto. I've actually wrote some code to scan the entire song for notes that can be played for different root notes, and by comparing for the most amount of notes that can be played on the C major scale, it will automatically pick the best root note for the song. For my testing, I would say if the notes of your song fits on the major scale, the results are pretty good with the auto root. But if there are accidentals that does not fit on the scale, unfortunately, right now it cannot be played. Although it could be a little bit finicky at times, and if you believe it did not find the proper root, or if the song sounds way too high or low pitched, there are a few configs at the end. As you can see, they start with auto root. These are some of the auto root params I think might help bettering the result. For example, you might want auto-root to only take into account for the melody part of the song, and there is auto-root lowest and auto-root highest. These are the lowest and highest notes you can set for auto-root to take into account. For example, in this case, any note below 48 will be counted as bass and will be ignored. Same as the highest, which is 84. Above that will also be ignored. Auto-root to use count means whether to use the total count of the notes or not. If it's set to false, it will only take into account for the appearance of a note instead of counting it. And the last two params, auto-root use channels and use tracks. These are also fairly straightforward. If you have a channel or track that the main melody is on, you could apply an additional filter on top of your already existing channel or track filter. If these are left empty, the existing filters will be used, and if those are empty, then all the channels and tracks will be used. Okay, that's about covered all the configs, but there's something I want to note in the end. During the course of testing, I've found that sometimes there could be a MIDI file and the program would play it at completely the wrong speed, the wrong tempo. Or sometimes there might be notes that cannot be played at all and the program will just error out. I found that it could help if you open up the song in MIDI editor and then save the MIDI file again. And there are some other times where I have to actually get rid of the note that causes the issue. I believe these are probably bugs in the MIDI library I'm using. More testing is likely needed to figure out a solution. Alright, that is pretty much everything I want to cover in this tutorial. But I'm sure some of you might still have some more questions on how to use and the specifics of all the configs and stuff. For that, I've left a link to my Discord server in the description. Don't be scared to come and ask questions, help each other out, and consider subscribing. This is still a pretty new tool I really like last week. Who knows what kind of improvements it might have in the future. I might be updating it as well. And with that, you've reached the end of the video. Good luck on everyone's adventures, and I hope we'll see you again. Bye.